Do you like money? What about infinite money? Look at those weeps. Someone told me that even though my historical site filled with weeps was really annoying, at least it was a good money printer. So let's see how much money it prints. If you stumble on a bunch of weeps like this, there's definitely a lot you can pick up. But after that, you need to wait for about a week for the weeps to create a new puddle, with about 6 to 8 drams of whatever liquid they produce. So these weeps are less of an infinite source of money, and more of a constant nuisance, updating your journal. Especially these tiny ones. You can always find the larger version in the rainbow wood. So I didn't pick up any of these liquids the first time through, but they can provide a lot of value early on. And I wanted to see exactly how much there was. Taking all this liquid from the historical site was surprising. I didn't expect there to be this much. We'll be collecting acid, oil, cider, wine, lava, and there was a little bit of water. Wine is probably most convenient. You might think this lava is the prize, but I had to make a bunch of thermoelectric cells, which is a problem because for that same 4-bit I could have just crafted laser rifles. So by the time you can make the cells, it's really not worth collecting anymore. But even if you can't make those cells, there's a good chance you can collect some of it, which is always nice, especially if you already have some thermoelectric cells. Of course, that might be your best cell at that point. You might not want to sell it anyway. It took me 19 cells to pick all this lava up. If I had made 19 laser rifles instead, that would have come out to 13,594 drams. But now that we have all the liquids, we'll just go back to Joppa and see how much they're worth. We'll just hand everything over to Tam to weigh out for us. I had to make 2 trips, so I left some on the ground here. If you couldn't take the lava, the wine or the cider is still pretty good. My ego is super high, but you should still get about 150 drams for them. And that could give you a drop of nectar or some of that mid-game equipment that you want. And if you can get all the liquids out, you'll have a nice little fortune of 3,404 drams, which means it would be easier to use a desalination pellet on 4,000 drams of brackish water. If you count the lava, then the haul comes out to be 11,973 drams, and I probably picked up some water on my first round through, so it wouldn't be unreasonable to say that it's closer to 12,100 drams. This is also including some acid that I left behind. You probably won't pick up that much lava, so the real value of weeps mostly comes from wine and cider. Because if you need lava, you should go to the asphalt mines. This is the only place you need to go to get lava. So for me, the only good weep is a wine weep, but those take too long to replenish. So when I want money, I come to see my friend here. I have a little pet cragman hanging out in Joppa. He's very happy here. You can see him playing with the glow pads. And when you hit this guy, rough jasper will fall off. So let's proselytize him. And we really don't want to hurt him too bad, so let's switch to carbide to limit that 15 strength modifier. And then single weapon fighting to limit some of those pesky extra limbs. Then we're just gonna hit him a little bit. He's totally cool with it, as you can see. Perfectly fine. It's certainly better than his life down in the caves of Cud. They can be found around strata 15 or 20 or something. Some of them drop more valuable gemstones, but let's get some of that jasper. Again, he's totally cool with it, but I wouldn't want to be water bonded to him. This cragman is definitely my favorite money printer. He's perfect. You can get as many gemstones as you want. They also make a decent companion with their high AV, so you can just bring them to whatever merchant you want and just clear them out. And that only took me a couple of minutes, so let's go over to Tam and see how much that jasper is worth. Each rough jasper is worth 200 drams per pound, which is more than twice the ratio of the thermoelectric cells. I did start with 5 rough jaspers, so that brings the total to 11,600 drams. There are so many ways to make a bunch of money in Caves of Cud, you're bound to stumble into one eventually. And then you just need to worry about spending it. No matter how much money you make, there is not always a lot to buy. So this will quickly become your bottleneck into the late game. We're going to look at just the trade goods I carry around, just to show that money printers like this really aren't necessary. You're going to have so much expensive junk, you won't be able to spend it. I'm even going to count herbaries since they're so easy to get and outpaced by salve injectors later on. And that comes out to 18,448. I did forget the Taco Supremas, which brings it up to 22,723. Because unfortunately, the best way to make money in Caves of Cud is to just play in the appropriate areas, and you'll just get so much stuff. So let's look at my junk pile and see how much that's worth, just to show that it's not hard to exceed the capacity for merchants to sell you anything useful, which becomes a problem when your source of money is heavy, like with liquids. Even early on, your biggest problem is going to be offloading those liquids and finding some way to store that value that's not going to over-encumber you. And when I run out of things to buy, I just drop it on the floor. In my opinion, that is the best place to store things. No muss, no fuss, and all of that junk is worth 118,822 drams. You really don't need to stress too much about money. Just keep pushing out and you'll find plenty of stuff to sell. But that's really the hardest part, is knowing where to go, which things are best to pick up. But sometimes you stumble upon one of these money printers, even if it is just a bunch of weeps. Or you use some other strategy to inject yourself with a bunch of cash, and they can give you a huge boost to getting into the later parts of the game. Unfortunately, you cannot drop all of your items the same way you can pick all items up. So my organizational system was ruined somewhat, but I did want to see how much my junk pile was worth. So now I'm going to need another chest, unfortunately. I don't like chests because they take an extra button to store anything in. But I knew just the place to get one. Back at my miserable historical site, filled with dozens of weeps, that gave me no end of trouble. Since I was at such a high level, it was a pretty miserable slog to spot all of them. They felt endless. I could feel myself going insane. Weep after weep after weep, adding a new journal entry every time I moved. I just realized I could turn those off. That's a little embarrassing. But there's always something new to learn about Caves of Cud. It really never stops. That's what makes it such a great game. I'm sure there's a dozen other ways to print infinite money. Comment yours below. Look at how long it takes me to pick my stuff up. It's still going. There it is. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble. No one in my life trusts me enough to play this game, so it's nice to talk about it. Thanks. Drams.